My phone has a virus or something.
Hello. Welcome to We're Live now, all the way from the United Kingdom. And I've got with me Mr. Chris Otilo, who is there in Kenya. Thank you so much for joining me. Today,
Thank
our
you.
topic is quite an interesting one. So if you're watching me right now, I want you to like this page. I want you to share this page. And I want you to tell your friends that we're live. We're going to be talking about protest, generally protest. So, but before I go into that, I'll ask my my guest to introduce himself in case you don't know who he is and what he does. He'll tell you who he is and what he does. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, my CEO. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for everybody who's joining us. I'm really glad to be in this spot again. My name is Chris Otieno. I'm a risk, security, safety, health, and environment consultant. I consult here in Kenya for the government, for private sectors, and for NGOs, both local and international. And currently, I am the regional security projects director for TRAZ Security Intelligence Solutions Limited. I'm in charge of East Africa, and the Horn of Africa. I am really glad to be here to share all this knowledge with all our viewers, and we keep inviting you to join us as we discuss more and more topics of concern and what is happening across the globe, and how that is linked to African security. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's a great honor to have you here. I know the world is talking about what is happening in Gaza, and we spoke about that intensively on Wednesday. For those that did not join us, please watch the replay, which is live on our Facebook page, live on our LinkedIn page, and liked on our YouTube page. But today, we're talking about something that is quite important. It's important in the sense that it's happening all over Africa, from the north of Africa to the west of Africa, from the east of Africa, to even the west of Africa. But before I go into that, I wanted you to talk about your perception of the protests that happened in Kenya and what lesson you believe that the Kenya government could learn from. Because people are watching us all over, and I could see that people are watching us already. If you're not watching us, please share this page, like this page, tell your friends and families that we're here. But I wanted you to talk about the protest from your perspective in Kenya, what you've seen as the impact, and what you think the lessons that could be learned from that incident.
Thank you very much. I am glad to share the question, respond to the question that you've asked. And from the onset, let me state that in just this year, Kenya has had myriad protests. We've had protests from the Generation Z, Generation Z. We have had protests from doctors. We've had protests from public service vehicles. And just like any other nation in the world, this has brought quite a number of challenges. Number one, the government spokesperson went on TV and told us the amount of money we lost in terms of turnaround time on our economy that resulted from the Generation Z protests. That was about 4 days, and that was about $7 billion or something like that. Huge amount of money. So the first effect is in the economy. The next thing, we saw quite what we would refer to as loss of life. And that led us into another national debate as a country, in which we questioned the performance of duty by our police persons, because a number of those youthful protests lost their lives, and that really service into focus.
Go ahead, sir.
Right?
There's
quite a lot of fracas. I mean, several departments of the government, and I mean, a lot of friction within the government itself, because it seems like there are quite a number of things that did not go right, and that left the government operatives, right from the executive to judicial to enforcement, asking many questions. And one of the most key questions was how or what happened to the extent that we would have our own parliament being taken over by a youthful population, non-armed. What could have led to that? So we learned quite a number of lessons. And one of the biggest lessons was intelligence gathering and dissemination to prepare the operational security personnel to be able to respond the kind of risks that was crystallizing in the country, not just respond, how to effectively respond and to make sure that is brought down. Something also came up also that we learned from these protests. There's quite a growing discontent amongst the population of my nation with reference to per household spend. Basically mean that the cost of living, just like in other countries globally, has gone so high, and my fellow citizens were trying to voice their concern to the government to ensure that they're dealing with this quite right. So broad, look at this broadly, we would say that a lot of security lessons were learned, and we are going to implement part of those lessons, and actually it has started.
Thank you so much, and you fit it on the nail. And this is, we know that, just like you rightly said, Nigeria also had a similar situation, and not just Nigeria alone, even Niger. And we saw the flying of Russian flag, even in the protests that happened, in Nigeria, and that more or less led some commentators to talk about the militarization of the protests. But moving on, now that you've explained what happened in Kenya and lessons that is peculiar to Kenya, but every one of us could learn from, what are the key factors that contributed to the rise of protests in Africa from your perspective, and how do they differ from across region, if you want to look at it?
I want to break this down and show you that, number one item, there has been evolution in how protests are happening. For example, like here in my country. Long before we had the last protest, we had political players, key political players in my country, calling up their support base, and they would come up to, for example, a gathering, and they would from there march on, following a plan on how they're going to execute what would lead to what we call this protest. But from there, we saw that there's this generation of our population, the young youthful population, who staged the protest without leadership, staged the protest in a way that was quite unique. And what did they do? The Internet of Things and technology development came into a big play here. What did we see them do? Yeah. We would see them call themselves up on all the social media platforms. They will produce posters warning the government, warning all of the security operatives that we're going to have, for example, occupy Parliament, for example, occupy the airport, for example, occupy the central business district, and all that. And what we would see, these persons would come from all over, to include the strongholds of the current ruling administration or the political party. In their stronghold, we don't see these guys go onto the street and wage or express their concern with what was really happening. The rise in the cost of living, the rise in the price of fuel, taxation in other areas, many other things that basically concern the social welfare of the common citizenry. And one other thing that we saw in this was how fast this could spread. Part of this was copied in Uganda, but that was responded very, very fast. We saw that in Nigeria. We saw that in many countries that you mentioned. Another concern that came in, my CEO, we saw Russian flags being waved somewhere in Nigeria. And we know very well there's a push and pull between the East and the West in, for example, Burkina Faso, in the whole of West Africa. So for analysts like myself and you, guys who are concerned with security, one question was, is Russia fueling this kind of protest for a gain? Do they want to project themselves much better off than the Western in terms of running African affairs or partnering with Africa, or whichever name you may call it? But basically, this happened when we were seeing France and other Western countries being ejected or evacuated or removed from Africa because of the new administration that taken up. So that left us wondering a lot what was going on.
No, you hit the point. And when we had our meeting yesterday, these are kind of the issues that we raised in terms of protest. The protests that we used to see in the past and the protests that we now see now, which is completely different, is a different ball game completely in the way in which protest is being done now. But with this protest, like you rightly said, what we are seeing is youth, taking, their destiny in their hands and saying, this is how we want life to be, using the internet to manage the way they operate. So how effective are current protest management strategy used by security forces in the African continent? Having been a military man yourself, somebody that worked within military, how effective is it from the past and the present?
I would say that the current way these protests are happening, or when there was genesis of the emergence of this new form of protest, the security apparatus, for example, in my country, were totally unaware, totally not ready for it. Totally not ready for it. As you'd compare there before, where they would send forces, geared for riot, ready to quell those riots. And they would use necessary force to bring that down. But this one is a bit different. These guys would call upon themselves through the media. They would be able to use that media outreach to reach as many of them as possible. They would create parameters that would resonate with all of them. And everybody would march and say, yes, this is the right thing to do. If you come back to my country here, initially we would conduct a protest along tribal lines. But this particular, it was all our youths from all walks of life taking up to the streets, voicing their concerns about the rise of that. They're not seeing anywhere economy growing or favoring the kind of jobs that they would do. A lot of taxes being raised against the jobs that they would do and things like that. And that really spoke to security forces, telling them, guys, things are changing. You need to change your tactics, move from that physical confrontation, and go start managing these things on the net, because all these protests are being managed and run on the net. So that high-tech management and the low physical confrontation management type of response that we are ready for, we found that these two are in two different parts of the world, and that was being managed on the platform, on the internet platform, really managed to mass numbers and mass numbers and mass numbers and communicate the information. Another interesting thing, they would use AI or AI software to translate that communication to native languages, basically telling you they were able to reach each and every person in this country in their native mother tongue language for them to understand that we are going to the street because of this. Interesting that came from that. You'd find that parents who are able would hire bodyguards for their children who are going for those protests, basically telling you that even the parents themselves were supporting what was going on. The only concern was the security and safety of their children.
That is quite interesting, because you talked about communication now. We noticed that communication between protesters and authorities in a peaceful resolution of protest seems to be non-existent at the moment. Is it that there is a difference in, is it the generational gap that is causing the miscommunication, or the fact that the institution, the security bodies are not actually learning as to go along? They are stuck in their ways, in the way in which they engage with these protesters, because it seems as if there's little or no communication with protesters at the moment. What's your view on that?
My view is, whatever you've made, the two items that you've mentioned are actually the items that made these guys very successful in how they would run their protests. Number one, there's a complete lack of communication, in that the protesters were able to circumvent police communication. They were able to override how police would gather intelligence or information from them. Police would depend on that physical, or somebody standing up and saying, this is what we are going to do, march to this place, march this place. They did not do that. They adopted a completely different strategy where they would communicate on the net, and they were able to evade the police passes. And we say here, part of this police force that we're having are much more above age as compared to the protesters. There could be par ages, but we're saying majority of them, so they do not understand the way of communication as much as those protesters who understand. That was a negative item that really did not play very well to those security responders to these protesters.
We're being watched live now, and a lot of people are taking interest. And I want you to send in your comment. Let us know where you're watching us from right now, so that we can acknowledge you. And when we look around the world for examples of how protests have been organized, as far as 15 years ago, and has been peaceful. If you look at the Iceland protest of 2009, context, of course, was the financial crisis then. The police adopted a non-confrontational approach, and that outcome was peaceful. The same way with the Denmark, protest on change, which is COP 15 in 2019. the police adopted what they call a dialogue policing approach. And what we found out was that despite the large number of participants, it went peaceful, not to talk of even the Women Canada's March of 2017. What, from your example, based on what you just said now, if there are three advice you give to Nigeria, to African police officers, police institution on managing project or managing protests, what would be your advice to them right now?
I understand very much that these police are very confused with reference to the kind of protests that take place in Africa. For example, the one that took place in my country. One, police have a mandate, constitutionally enshrined mandate, to protect property, life, and maintain public order. Now, when our Gen Z say that they are going to protest, one thing that happened, the Minister of Interior National Coordination, Professor Kithure Kindiki, who's now our Deputy President, and we congratulate him for that, ordered police to provide police escort for these persons, for the protesters. And that was tried. But it got to a point, these guys became chaotic and started damaging property. So what did that happen? Police had to respond because that is in their mandate to protect that kind of property. Now what happened? Because they went to that protest, some of them with live bullets, some of them with rubber bullets, some of them with cannons and things like that. It got to a point that they were overpowered, and they started using whatever resource that was there. That's what I'm saying, therefore, that our intelligence need to learn something. That things have changed. Mobilization can be done online. Changing and shaping views can be done online. So we must invest more in Internet of Things, in cybersecurity, and be able to have, for example, current industry 4.0 technologies, for example, block data analytical and AI, to be able to collect all this information that is running there on the internet, analyze it, and after analysis, guide our decision making so that we can be able to respond well. What happened to Denmark and Iceland, where you mentioned? We've known that natural and time memorial, right? When you go to the first world economies, their kind of riots are different from ours. Sometimes ours take violent courses. Why? For many reasons. Because of the anger, because of what is happening within our population, within our countries. But when you go there, there's probably not national something like that, or national approach to protest. Just packet, which is manageable by police. Then also you find that the police, the government and private sector partnership is something that has been created for a very long time, and they're able to ride on that to enable them to manage their riots. But when you come back here, the public-private sector partnership is 2 worlds apart. Even when it comes to a situation where we are required to approach it from a dual perspective to resolve, it becomes difficult. We end up in using lethal, non-lethal, and lethal force in quelling this protest. That is the difference.
Thank you so much, because you've touched on 3 things I wanted to bring together, which is the social media role in it. You've also talked successfully about, how, balancing, African government need to balance the need for security with the protection of citizens' right of assembly. But let's look at it from an international dimension now, which you've more or less touched on as you were finishing your speech, because there is an international standard on protest management. How protests should be done, talking to the people, managing the individuals in terms of managing them, their routes, talking with them, making sure they're responsible, fishing out the people that are committing crime in the midst and removing them from it. Do you think protest is here to stay in Africa, or should we just believe that the protest we've seen in 2024 is the last of it? We're not going to see any more protests in Africa?
It will be difficult to affirmatively say that this is the end. It's also very difficult, but it's very easy to say we are yet to see more. Why am I saying that? We still have a lot of issues in the African continent that need to be addressed. So many issues. We have leadership that is not quite concerned to the core of what the citizenry are going through. There are statements sometimes they make. There are partnerships that they make. There's being skewed to either east or west that sometimes don't really represent the need of those in the citizenry. And these kind of things, right? In the fact that our economies are heavily dependent on fuel. And we see what happens if anything happens in the Middle East or somewhere, the price of fuel from OPEC countries will go up. And as soon as the price of oil goes up, the ripple effect will be felt to include household spend. And when that pressure becomes too much, then we will see the citizenry raising up their voices and saying enough is enough. And the way they do that is to go to the streets. And that amounts to protests. So I do not see in the near future when we will see an end to protests. For example, we also have elections coming up. And we know very well sometimes elections in Africa, they're not fair and they're not free and fair. That alone will also fuel what we are saying is going to be is as a contributor to protests. So I do not see the near future, the next 50, 30 years to come, that protests in Africa that we are seeing the last of protests in Africa. I do not see. Neither in the world. I do not see.
Okay. Okay. If you do not see it, which is understandable because of the way in which things are going, the economic situation, is there a long-term strategy that the African countries could adopt to reduce the likelihood of protests turning into violence? How can they do it? Is there one or two advice on how they could manage it better?
Thank you for that question. I think as TRAZ, we are one of the solutions in managing this kind of a risk in the future. The kind of expertise we have, the kind of years of experience that we have in our own setup will be something really big that can help many governments in Africa and across the globe in how they want to manage their protests. And that would start from, for example, how do we create a lasting, trustworthy public-private sector partnership that can go way ahead in communicating government manifesto or government plans in uplifting the lives of its citizenry? That could be a lot. Risk management, like for example ourselves, we could partner with these governments, conduct risk assessments to them, be able to determine which are risks that are inherent and which are risks that will be emerging, depending on our global look at how things are running, and also give them this kind of a report. They could bring that down to actionable and policies and frameworks and legalize them, implement them, create awareness among the population, and that could drive very good mitigation strategies down the line. The next thing, we can also assist government as TRAZ in conducting the elections to ensure that these elections are viewed by public as fair, free and fair elections. And if we do that, if the government uptake that, then we are saying the satisfaction level on the outcomes of the election down at the citizenry level goes up, and that reduces the possibility of them going to the streets to protest the outcome of these results. Many other solutions that we can coin. Studies. We can go out there and look at the data that is available there. And from that data, we could coin very, very, very solid risk mitigation strategies, which if adopted by these governments, would go way ahead in reducing this protest that we are discussing, and that will improve the safety and public safety and security of all environments in the African countries, and that takes us way better in terms of performance when it comes to security response and maintaining law and order across African nations.
Thank you so much. We're getting comments coming in, so Moni said it's quite interesting your view on this issue of protest, and people are watching, but fortunately we can't stay here for forever. We're talking about protests now, and we're getting to the end, and I've got a question for you. Most of the protests in Africa have led to anger, living cost, as there are protests also in the UK. Most of the protests in the UK is intelligent led. But one of the things we've noticed is that protests in Africa is also leading to overthrowing of government, which might explain why some governments are a bit reluctant when they see the protests, when they see the issue of protest, they get a bit agitated because they don't know if it's their opponent that is trying to overthrow them and take the mandate away from them or whatever. But let's bring it home. TRAZ is going to be releasing a document we've been working on for months, and we're letting this out of the basket because we're talking about protest. We're coming up with a document of about 200 pages looking at protests across Africa in the last 10 years. And like you rightly said, there are a lot of industries that could learn from the report that we're coming out with and be able to actually build on it. If there's any advice you want to give to businesses, small businesses, when it comes to protests, because we know that most of them are the ones that really get affected because their things get destroyed. If there's one or two protests that you could advice that you could give to small businesses if they are prone or they are living in an area with protests, what would be your advice to them?
Thank you for that question. I really want to respond to that very candidly. One item that I want to state is that in TRAZ here, we have solutions that could help small businesses sustain themselves through crisis times. And one of that is we have a department, a consolidated department that really deals with mitigating of risks and risk assessment that brings out a document. Or the result of that, you would see, for example, include business continuity plans. That is well designed by ourselves from a very long, careful study involving involving capable and capacity developed professionals from our own selves who can analyze the business environment, right from business environment to the country environment to globe to the continent environment to globe environment, and bring that home to form up a strategy that a business could follow through to ensure that in the event that there are protests within their environment, they manage that very well, maintain their profitability, and at the same time ensure the safety and security of their staff and their property, even their presence online, is maintained, and they are not in whatsoever at or any given time negative effect that could affect their business or could drive them into closing their business. The next thing here at TRAZ, we are able to train the human capital of any business or any organization to prepare them and ready them to respond as a block unit, not as individuals, to respond as a block and ensure that that block response is well coordinated in a manner that necessitates the protection of life and physical property that is in that business. Equally, we have advisors, right from the CEO, myself, and the rest of the people, who can be able to advise businesses against mitigating the strategic risks, at the same time operational risks, and equally reputational risks. You do not want your business portraying itself out there as partisan in what is happening within that country. So TRAZ and his entire experienced consultants are able to come into the business and advise accordingly on how well do you build your resilience, how well do you build your response, and how well do you build your capacity to be able to marry all these factors that support business continuity into one, and also support your implementation and monitoring and evaluation as you move forward to every changing environment that is there in your respective country. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And you hear it from one of the regional directors. You know, this document is going to be coming out very, very soon. We're working on it, getting, expert views on the document. Is covering a period of 10 years from 2014 to 2024. We're looking at what businesses could do to improve themselves and be prepared for conflict, for protest, what security agencies could do better to mitigate and be more proactive in engaging. We have information there for family whose their children could be caught up in it. So, and for lawyers who will be representing, we have information for the media houses, because some of them are being held for misinformation. We saw the protests that happened even in the UK, that it was through misinformation on the internet that the 3 kids that were killed were killed by migrants, not knowing that they were attacked by a British citizen. But yet that misinformation led to a serious riot that even some of us could not go to work because they were taking protests from one region to another within the UK. So misinformation is also dealing with the issue of misinformation for media houses, who have to be careful about how they portray protest and make sure that it's a balanced information, not to bring the nation down. So let me use this opportunity to say, do you have anything else that you want to draw to the attention of our viewers right now before we call it a day?
Thanks, Bonasi. I'd just like to echo what you've said. Media reporting. We encourage, like you said, the document that you're producing out or nearly going out there to the public. We encourage them to access our document, look at the strategy that we are proposing. But like you've mentioned, which I'd like to echo, is responsible media reporting when it comes to these kinds of situations. We can coach them, we can work with them, we can partner with them to ensure that we are planning our way in terms of our report, because what we report and how it gets consumed and how it shapes views can drive these protests towards situations that we expect and leading to loss of life or even extrajudicial killing, bringing other matters in place. So we are saying that here at TRAZ, we have analyzed this data, we have the information, we have put that into a document. Work with us. Let us go on to ensure that we are protected and ready to really counter these emerging risks or inherent risks when they occur. We are ready to do that and glad to partner with you in ensuring that we are forward working towards ensuring public safety. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just for our viewers who are watching us right now, if you live and work in Africa and you're looking for extra source of income, there is a training that we're running on the 26th of October. It's a one-day certificate training, and we're going to be training people effectively on how to work remotely. You could live in Kenya, live in Nigeria, or live in Uganda and be earning dollars. That's an opportunity. Please check out our Facebook page, LinkedIn page, YouTube page for more information about that training. Registration is open, so you could benefit from it. If you're a fresh graduate and you're looking for an intelligent security firm to work with for Intel to get experience, please get in touch with us. Info at, as you could see from our handle there, info@trans-intelligence-security.com. Send us your CV and your 500 words. Explain why you want to work with us as an Intel, and we'll be able to do that. We have 2 vacancies at the moment for somebody that will work as our administrator for handling our X and our X platform to post information there. If you know you have that experience and you're looking to earn money, whichever part of Africa you live in, send us an email again at info@trans-intelligence-security.com. If you are interested in working with us as an email marketing advisor or administrator, then get in touch with us again through that email. Send us email, because there's opportunity. We have this platform and we're using it, to provide value, because we know if we recruit somebody, they will feed their family, and that's another 5-6 people that will benefit from it. So that's our little way in which we can add value. But more importantly, the Intel opportunity means that you'll be learning from the expert, 300 years of experience brought together. You'll be learning from us, and we have one person that is already with us. If you are interested, drop us a mail, drop us an inbox, and we would get in touch with it. So from here in Kent, United Kingdom, I say it's bye for me, Mr. Chris.
From Kenya, Nairobi, goodbye for me, and welcome into our more and more educative channel.
And watch out for next week. Next week, we are going to be talking about the US election and the impact on Africa. As you know, people are going to, so we're going to be having that conversation. If you want to be part of our broadcast, this is not restricted to us alone. Drop me a message, and we'll talk about whatever topic. As far as the security topic, we are willing to accommodate you. And if you're a subject matter expert in your field, get in touch with us, and definitely we'll be able to accommodate you. So until we meet again, good morning wherever you are, good afternoon wherever, and good evening. Have a lovely day. God bless you.
Thank you, my CEO.